Hello, you're all very welcome to podcast 5, part 2, with myself, Adam Wilson, and on the other line, I'm delighted to have Pierce Townsend from Galway. He's a strength and conditioning coach, and working with GAA players and soccer players. Pierce, thanks for jumping on, and you're very welcome.
Cheers, thank you.
So,
Appreciate it.
Pierce, just give us a quick background on yourself, who you're working with at the moment. Who are you coaching at the moment?
So my name's Pierce from Galway, Ireland, strength and conditioning coach. Working with a lot of GAA soccer players, mostly injured athletes. So basically, people come to me when they're hurt and injured, want to get back on the pitch, and then I'll take them from there. So that's my main client base. That's what my passion is as an athlete who's had a lot of injuries over the years. So got me into this in the first place. So I have a passion for that, getting people back playing the sport they love without injury, pain, having to take painkillers. I used to dose myself in painkillers for a game. So just giving people the ability to play again is my job now.
Yeah, great stuff. And like with the injuries, I know you have certain protocols that in terms of the ATG principles and what it is utilizing range training, which is the main theme of today's podcast. So today's podcast, we're going to be talking about the importance of range training with GAA players. And to start with, we're just going to explain what is range training, what are the difference between short, mid, and long range strength. So Pierce, do you want to explain them and maybe give examples as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So start with short range, because that's where you start everyone with short range. They come in with an injury. Short range, basically, to explain it, first of all, it's when there's not much of a stretch on a joint and then we contract it. So if I think of my bicep here, that's kind of a short range movement. That's going to create cramp. It's going to create blood flow into my bicep. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for that blood flow, which is going to heal the tissues, because everyone can agree that blood heals all. So the more blood we can get to a joint, the more healing effect that we're going to have on that joint. And then our longer range movement is when it's already on a stretch. So if I'm already stretching my biceps, so I'm lying down on a bench and I put my arm out here and then I do a curl, that's a long range position because it's already on, the tissues are already stretched, and then I'm asking them to contract. And that's going to cause a lot more tissue damage. It's going to be a lot more anabolic, but it's also going to cause that adaptation to actually restructure and remodel those tissues so that we can get the adaptation we need to help the athlete get back playing again. So we just did short range work. Be fantastic. You'd get blood flow, you'd make them feel good, but you're not actually going to change the tissues in that injured area. So when they go back on the field again, they're just going to re-injure themselves because you haven't actually strengthened up the tendons and the ligaments of that injured area in the first place. Yeah. And the mid-range then is just kind of the in-between area where most people will live. And that's where you can kind of shift more weight, be more powerful, but it's not going to cause as much tissue adaptation. So there's a certain time and a place for that, but that's usually comes well after someone has built a tolerance in those lengthened positions.
Yeah, brilliant. Can you give examples then of the different ranges of different exercises? So for short, mid, and long range.
Yeah. So think about a hamstring curl. Let's go with the hamstring. So if I'm on a hamstring curl machine and I'm curling up, so say I'm lying down and I'm bringing my heels towards my glutes, that's going to be a short range dominated movement. The hardest part is at the top as I'm trying to squeeze that pad in towards me. So as I shorten the joint, that's what short range is essentially. And then you think about a Nordic curl, as everyone knows. As I come to the bottom of a Nordic curl, that's the hardest part. So when the knee joint is actually at a lengthened position. So you basically, the prerequisite to Nordics is hamstring curls. A lot of people jump straight in and think Nordics are kind of sexy and I want to be able to do that, but they haven't built that tissue tolerance in the back of their knee in the first place. So something with like a short range movement, like a hamstring curl, is going to allow them the ability to actually get into that Nordic.
Yeah, great explanation there. Again, I think the points to note there that each range has its own pros and cons, and there's, for instance, as you says, the short range stuff, very beneficial for, let's say, recovery, for getting the blood flow, even for a warm up. So you're doing like a hamstring curl before I do Nordics, I do some sort of hamstring curl myself to get that blood flowing, get the muscles really, really warm, etc. Also as well for short range, if you're coming back from an injury, very, very, very beneficial, because it's not creating a lot of muscle tearness, it's not creating a lot of muscle damage. And again, it has like a healing effect. So a hamstring curl is one example. Backward sled is another example then for the knees as well. Getting a lot of blood flow without causing the damage. With the long range stuff, that's where really the kind of magic within the ATG is, in terms of where you're going to get the most kind of adaptations. And as you point out on the joint structure itself, so the connective tissues like the tendons and the ligaments, and that's where I think the ATG system is different from most other systems that are out there, because it has that emphasis on the long range stuff. As you said, the Nordics, the ATG split squat, for instance, like the Jefferson curl. And in the mid range, there is no wrong, there's no good or bad, or there's a time and place for everything. The mid range, let's say a trap bar, rack pull, trap bar deadlift, a bench press, there is a time and a place for them. Towards if you're peaking an athlete as well, they're more neurologically dominant, less muscle damage, less muscle soreness. So again, if you've got a competition up a couple of weeks, that mid-range stuff could be very, very beneficial for peaking an athlete. So Piers, moving on, that like if you have, let's say, a player who, I know you just touched on there, you've a lot of return to play, the physio's giving you the green light to do a strengthening program for this GAA player. How would you, let's say, if you want to use an injury, an example, how would you actually return that athlete back onto the pitch using the range?
Yeah, so we'll take the knee, for example, because that's a lot of the injuries that you see, injuries I had myself as well. That will start with just, it depends on the severity of the injury. If it's like a ligament tear or something like that, you'll start even more regressed, or it could be just patella pain, whatever it may be. But we'll always start with blood flow, as we mentioned, short range movements, and that will be sleds. The sled's the best way, because you can even start just without the sled, and you can just walk backwards, and you can just get that blood flow. Like, do it 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the evening. Sometimes you just do that with someone for a couple, a week or two, and get things moving again. And then you can introduce the sled, and you can start really making that a tough exercise. Like, that's a good workout, even just sledding alone. So that's just to get that blood flowing, so they can actually get them into some other movements. From there, then I always think above and below the joint, pump it. Again, still short range. So I'll pump the tibs and the calves, really just get that blood flowing from the feet. And then you go in and you'll do some kind of reverse step up. So a Polypin or Patrick, which is just a short range knee extension exercise. So it's just a little bit of range, just like kind of that with your knee. Again, it's creating that blood flow. I'll do that for high repetitions. All of this stage with the short range at first, I'll do it for really high reps, like 20 plus. Just create blood flow. Just get a pump in that muscle, in that area. And then you'll turn around and you'll do hamstring curls again. Maybe like you get a band or something. You don't even need a hamstring curl. Just get a band and where the tension is harder as you pull the band out further, and just kind of work that short range for, again, 30, 40, 50 reps. Like Louis Simmons used to do 100 plus reps of banded hamstring curls with powerlifters all the time, because he knew, like, he damaging their joints with these heavy loads with the way they lift. So he used to combat it a bit with sleds, with banded hamstring curls. All of that short range worked, so that he knew, okay, I'm actually helping recover these athletes in between sessions when they're lifting fucking 500 kilos or whatever it may be.
He was ahead of his he was ahead of his time with the range work, without actually calling it range work in the short range. And as he says, for his active recovery, as it says, he really got the sleds. He started really the sleds, and they came from the fins, the deadlifts, the fins were dominating the deadlift, and he was asking what to do, and they drag trees all day, and then he got that idea from the sleds, and he was big on the wheelbarrow as well. But yeah, the short range stuff then as well, like he used to call it mini workout. So that was his kind of active recovery. So they do the hard
Yeah.
session, let's say in the morning. If it was a lower body day, as I said, they do the hamstring curls or they do some sort of knee joint exercise where it's heavy, high reps at a short range. If it was an upper body, you do loads of tricep push downs.
Push down. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
and it was just strengthening up the tendon because the key concept here is, right, and I'm sorry to interject, Pierce, is if we're doing a lot of the mid-range stuff, whether it's benching, whether it's rack pulls or trap bar deadlift, the muscles are getting a high stimulus, but the tendons and the ligaments are getting very, very little, you know, and there's going to be a massive discrepancy, a massive imbalance then between your muscle strength and our connective tissue strength. And that's, you know, the studies have shown that's where, you know, the injury risk is going to be greater. So, yeah, he was ahead of his time. But sorry, yeah, going back onto the hamstring curls, sorry for the knee.
Yeah. So
Short range.
So created blood flow, we've got
Yeah.
things moving, we've pumped the joint from above and below. So now it feels good. Yeah, and then that might be it at the start. That might be your session. Like, job done, good luck. See you in a few days. Because that might be enough for someone. But from there, then we want to progress that on to the longer range movements. Because if we just did that work and it does feel good, and if that's all we did, eventually, as you mentioned there, we're going to cause an even bigger imbalance. We're going to shorten that area. It's going to tighten up, and then we're going to ask that athlete to like maximally sprint, or all of a sudden have some torque and pull on a joint. It's just going to pop. It's just going to tear. It's going to rip apart. And that's not what we're looking for. Like, that's what we're trying to avoid. So we get that short range work, we get that blood flowing, and then we progress them on into a longer range position where we're actually going to now cause adaptation and change the structure, remodel the tissues. So with the knee, after I've done my sleds, my lower leg work, my Pelican step ups, short range knee extension, short range knee flexion, then I'll get them into a split squat. This is a full ATG, like ass to grass split squat. I will start regressed. 2 hands on a box, foot well up, and just trying to get that knee into full flexion. Just forcing that knee out over that toe, just trying to get that hamstring to cover the calf. And that's it. Like, you're not even having a lot of load, like you're actually taking load off this person, but it's just getting that joint used to fully closing. Because a lot of people's knee hasn't even been in a full range for years. Maybe if they're trying to do a quad stretch every once in a while, that's the closest it will ever get to hamstring over calf. So just getting that joint into that position again, letting it know, hey, okay, I'm safe here. Like, this isn't a position to be scared of, kind of thing.
And speaking,
and then from there,
sorry, Chris, sorry to interrupt. Just on the split squat, because you know, a few lads have come to me and say that the split squat is it can have a negative effect on someone who has knee issues. So just to clarify, you know, what's your answer for that? So like some people say, geez, that'd be too much for my knee, or that could actually have negative effects for my knee. What's your answer to that?
I'd say if you look at that and think that it will have negative effects on you, then it will. 100% it will. Like, if this squat looks like it scares you, okay, then don't, like, you're not able for that. But what you do is you build up the tolerance. You get the short range first, you get the blood flowing, which will probably make you feel good. I've had people who've said, oh, I can't squat right like that. 10 minutes of sled and they come in and they're able to squat. You know, their knee wasn't that bad, but it just needed that blood flow. But then also you regress it down, then you find the level where you can do it. Like, if you get get your stairs, step up on your third step, grab your banisters, and slowly put your knee over your toe, like take weight off, or I'll get a band, big, heavy, like green or black band, real thick, and let someone hold it so it takes so much of their weight off so they can trust their body to go into that position. And as the nature of the band is more tension at the bottom. So as they get closer to the bottom, even less weight is in that position, and then they can go back out. So you can regress, you can find a level where it won't hurt. But I would say, like, if you look at that and think, Jesus, that's going to be scary, that hurts, it probably gives you an idea of where your knee is at this moment of time. So don't think, oh my God, I can play sports soon, if that position looks like it's scary, because it shouldn't be scary.
Yeah.
But I get it because it used to be scary for me too. I remember the first time I seen Ben Patch doing like a sissy squat, I was like, holy shit, that
Yeah,
I was
yeah, yeah,
squirming at it,
yeah,
thinking that's terrifying. I would break. So yeah, like regressed long range work
yeah,
is actually the key. I think
yeah,
regressed long range work is the secret sauce. It's not
yeah,
even the full, it's that regressed area that bridge the gap from short feels okay. I get the blood, long is where I'm going to cause these adaptations. How do I get there? Well, you regress the long range.
yeah,
You take your weight off, you put your foot up on a high step, and you just get used to that position again. And then you slowly bring the step down, you slowly take your hands away, and then over weeks, depending on the person, depends on the injury, you can progress that down and you're all the way down. Then you're getting more range. You've taken your weight off. You've even added weight then, and then it progresses from there.
yeah. No, brilliant.
And then,
Yeah,
so just with quickly with the split squat as well, one side at a time, I think that's magic because a lot of people will have a more dominant knee or whatever, or if they've had surgery on a knee, that side becomes stiffer. The other hip then becomes whatever it may be. So that's one side at a time where you just get to lengthen one hip, work on one knee, and then swap and go again. And if you have a really bad side, you just start with that side, finish with that side, and it slowly then it will catch up with the good side, as opposed to just doing bilateral work all the time. So double leg work. Um, that balance will just get worse and worse. So that's also the other secret beauty of the split squat for just example is the one side at a time. It's magic. You can really rebuild it.
yeah. No, brilliant. And like, my kind of answer to them lads is like, you wouldn't start someone who never squat before with 100 kilos on the back, and it's the same with a full split squat. So
Yeah.
obviously you start, as you said, you find your level, you regress, and then you slowly build up, and that might take someone months or years. But there's women, there's people in their 70s that are able to do it. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone can do it, but again, it's finding, as you said, find your level. And we wouldn't, for instance, just put someone who has knee issues straight onto that. So I think that's an important point to note. So you're going on to the long range stuff. You have your ATG split. The athletes now has the capacity. They've built up the tolerance. They've gotten some good short range stuff in. There's no pain. You've regressed the split squat. You found their level. Where'd you go from there? Is that the end, or is there other levels to your knee protocol?
Yeah. So then I would, once they've kind of mastered or they're getting better at the movement, then I'll hit a block of where it's like high repetition. So like an accumulation type phase. And this will just be one to get them really used to the movement. Like if you just do split squats more often, you'll be better at split squats. Like it's as simple as that. And we believe in this movement so much. We believe that it's going to cause the best or adaptation for this example of the knee. So let's blast it. But I'll do it for high repetitions. So one to get used to movement, but two to combat muscle atrophy. So if someone's been injured for a long time, for example, with the knee, their quad has disappeared at this stage. Their hamstrings are probably smaller, like that kind of thing. So really trying to just build a bit more muscle tissue in that area again. I'll hit it for high reps for a block. So that's only just like 3-4 weeks, whatever it may be. We'll hit it for anywhere from 10 to 12, 15 reps, depending on the movement. Might even finish with squats then, like slant board squats for like sets of 20. I love that at the end. After you've done your Pelicans with them, after you've
Yeah,
done your split squats with them, you hit them for like 2-3 sets of like 20 reps with a kettlebell or a dumbbell and just blast it. Or like VMO bounces at the bottom, so just quarter reps. Again, just into that bottom area, really just closing the joint, letting it know it's safe here, but you're just pumping it. You get a crazy burn. People are always, no one ever likes them ones, or bottom quarter split squats. Just really getting a pump in that area.
yeah,
And from there, then once they kind of have that capacity built up again, because that's the other thing, people will lose that capacity in the muscles. Like I remember when I hurt my knee when I was coming back, I was getting a burn off like 5-10 reps of things that I used to not be able to get a burn on. That kind of, so like that building that capacity back up. And once we have that, then we have to build the strength up now. And we actually have to get it stronger. So then I'll move into a intensification phase, for example, where we'll lift some heavy weight. We'll drop the repetitions down. Then we'll start sticking with the knee. We'll put a barbell on your back. We'll start squatting you, ass to grass, all the way down. 2 legs now, because you've built up the balance between sides, and now we'll start to shift some weight. This will also have an effect on your nervous system then as well. Get that fired back up. Let it reacquaint that, okay, I can use all these muscle fibers. I can use everything again to actually fire up as an athlete. And then, yeah, so just building that adequate strength into the area, get the hamstring strong. So really start blasting your hamstring curls. Really increase the weight on your pollock and step, or increase the height. That depends. That's a different conversation. But your split squat, drive it up. Now, split squats, I wouldn't go crazy heavy. I would never really go below 3 reps, to be honest. But that's just me. I stick between 3 to 5 for those heavier sets. But yeah, just trying to build up the strength now, the adequate strength levels back to where they need to be. Get your posterior chain strong. Getting your quads, your hamstrings, your calves, get them really fucking strong, so that there's no issues when you're going back. You're not feeling weak, and that just gets the athlete more comfortable. Then they're like, they feel good. Then, geez, I'm shifting weight now again. Like I'm in a good place. Like I couldn't dream of this 2-3 months ago. The thought of having a bar on my back was scary. The thought of being in that position was scary, and you're just getting them more comfortable and building their confidence again in this kind of phase.
Yeah, brilliant. That's a great, good, in-depth, step-by-step approach for the knee there. In terms of that, right? So we've looked at how range training has effects on sort of injury, return to play. What are the effects of the range work as opposed to some of the mid stuff in athletic performance? And can you explain what's the mechanisms, what's going on as well within, the tissues there as well? That's, for instance, there's people doing the range training and they're getting massive athletic benefits. What for you the benefits, the main benefits of this range work for just performance as a whole?
Yeah, so I mean, one is just probably the number one thing above anything, without even getting like, you don't even have to know science or anything like that, is they can trust their body again.
Yeah.
Like an athlete who doesn't trust his body, the body is not going to let you go at full capacity. It's just not. No matter what you think, oh, I'm tough, I can push through it. Oh, your body's going to put a governor on. It's going to be like, hang on, that's going to hurt us. Let's not do that. So the ability to be able to trust your body again with these long range positions that we mentioned are going to cause tissue adaptation. They're going to remodel, restructure the area so that you actually can grow your tendons, grow your ligaments. Like they're anabolic, just like muscles. So grow them areas, what allows you to trust your body again. Then you're like all of a sudden able to express your full kind of potential, express your full ability. I think that's number one. That transforms an athlete on the field, because now it's just, I can trust my body. Like I know so many people that come to me first, they just don't trust their own body. But like I just never max out on a sprint. I'm just kind of afraid. Or like if I have to kick a ball, I never really want to give it full whack, just in case my hamstring goes, or just in case I feel that in my knee again, or whatever, or my ankle, or whatever it may be. It's like, that's no way to be an athlete. It's no way to live, but there's just no way to be an athlete. It's not being able to trust your own body. So that's number one. But to get to that point, and how you get there is, as I've just mentioned, the tissue adaptations that you're going to get. So if you just focus, again, as you mentioned, the short range work, which is how we get into all of this in the first place, that's blood flow. That's what's going to heal joints. Cool. We just do that. We're going to tighten it up, and we're going to cause major issues. And that's where most people live, between short and mid range. The mid range work, like your trap bar, deadlifts, and all of that, I think they're great for testing an athlete. So as we mentioned, peaking as you're coming in, see where they're at. How much weight can they shift? How can they just fire up all of a sudden? A rack pull, those kind of things. They're fantastic, but they're not developmental exercises. You take a young kid, let's say 15, 16, and he wants to go become an elite athlete, and I just trap bar deadlift and a rack pull him, he'll make gains at first, of course he will. Throw him against a wall, he'll make gains as a kid.
Yeah.
But eventually it's going to plateau, and he's going to start to have joint issues. And God forbid, he's probably going to tear his ACL or something like that. It's just because now he has so much horsepower, and he's got so much force in those glutes and those hips, but he just doesn't have the adequate strength below it or the tissue tolerance below it to handle it. So like your ankles, your knees are almost like they're your brakes. So if we build those brakes up and then you build the horsepower and you just keep it in check the whole time, therefore like you're not going to have as many injuries. And then that increased tissue tolerance. So when you have tissue tolerance in these lengthened positions, that's going to reduce massively your risk of injury, because most injuries happen when you're on stretch. If you're sprinting, it's when someone goes, they reach as their foot makes contact with the ground. That's when you'll see them hit the back of their hamstring. Always, it's just as it's lengthened out, impact, tear. That's where it happens. So if we can build the tolerance in those positions through long range movements, so you think about a Nordic, right at the bottom of a Nordic. If you can like hover at 45 degrees in the bottom of a Nordic, I mean, you're in a pretty good place. Like, I'm not saying that's going to bulletproof your hamstrings or anything like that. No way. But if you can do that as opposed to not being able to do that, I think you're in a much better place, or much reduced risk of a hamstring tear as someone who can't do it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, the injury, as you great detail about the injury reduction risk with the range work, but I think, again, with the performance side of things as well, as you kind of touched on as well, it changes the structure of an athlete. So as it says, youth athlete, or even myself growing up, I was doing a lot of the mid range. I was doing the trap bar deadlift. I was doing the hip thrust. I was doing the bench press. I wasn't actually getting any more athletic. I wasn't getting any faster. I was doing all these quote unquote power exercises. I was doing, clean pulls, these jump exercises. I was doing all this mad speed program, but I hadn't changed my structure. So, like, even though you're doing this, let's say, neurological stuff, but I didn't have the capacity within the joints, within the muscles, to actually produce serious force. And when you go to the bare bones of athleticism, right? If you want to go down, it is start with, if you want to jump higher, if you want to run faster, you have to have high force outputs. That doesn't mean you have to lift 200 kilos on a squat, but you have to be, even soccer players who may not be, quote unquote gym, big numbers in the gym, they can produce a lot of force, the fast ones. You get in a mid-thigh pull, they can produce a lot of force. So, force is the foundation, right? And if you don't have that force, you could have great athletes that are genetically gifted, that can produce a lot of force. But for myself, that was a shit athlete, weak as F. I couldn't produce a lot of force. And I was doing these mid-range exercises, that wasn't changing my structure, and it wasn't allowing me to produce force. I was expressing what I had, which was very little, but it wasn't building the force. And I think that's
important note.
It is, yeah. It doesn't build that structure to produce more force in it, in one sentence. Doesn't develop the athlete, and the beauty about these long range exercises, where they're your Nordics, your ATG split squat, your Jeffers curl, your already full stretch RDLs, your seated good mornings for the back. These are developmental exercises, that are changing the structures of an athlete. And the ATG, the results speak for themselves. With the people that are doing this ATG stuff, people are doing this long range stuff, and their athletic performance is improving.
Yeah, absolutely. And then like with the tendons and ligaments too, when you actually remodel and change the structure of your tendons and ligaments, it gives you a massive competitive advantage.
100%.
Like if you can I always think of it like, just keep your connective tissue ratio just always a little above the muscles. So that just, obviously, as we mentioned, reduces your injuries. But if you're more connective tissue dominant, you'll also last longer on a field, like, because you're less muscle bound. So your muscles will always give up first based on just blood flow and all that kind of thing. So if you're more tendon dominant and you use your springs more in a game, you're just going to last longer. You're just going to feel more athletic. Like that's why Michael Jordan could still dunk in the fourth quarter.
Right point.
And other people couldn't.
Right point.
Because he just had those springs. That's what was his main driver of movement, as opposed to your big muscle bound lad who can squat 200 kilos. That's how he can produce that force to jump. But throughout a game, he is going to tire so much quicker than that skinny kid who can just produce so much force because he's just a spring. Like those Messiah, whatever, those guys, when they jump, like they just are springing. They've never squatted in their life. but they have that tissue tolerance. They have that tendon, like, tension that they can build within their feet, within their knees, all of that in their Achilles tendon. And that allows them to have that spring to can just hop like they look like they're on a trampoline.
And I think it's important to note, with GAA players, playing yourself, and such an emphasis on running, and we touched on the previous, and that what that's actually doing is reducing that bounciness, reducing that springiness in. It has a negative effect on your tendons, in developing your tendons. It actually just wears them down. So it's counterintuitive, I know, but the more running a GAA player, like needless running, I'm talking about. There's a time and a place, for sprinting or within a game. I'm not saying totally, but this extra junk that's prevalent, prevalent in GAA, it's actually just taken away from their tendon strength, their tendon capacity, and then onto the pitch, as you said, they're going to have less bounciness towards the throughout the whole game. You know what I mean? And they're going to tire out quicker. So I honestly believe that the less junk running a GAA player does, the more conditioned he'll actually be for the sport. And I know that might sound mad, but as you just touched on there, that if you think about the physiological, what's going on in the actual body, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. Like when I tore my knee, I didn't do anything fitness, traditional conditioning or running for 9-10 months. The only thing I ever did was sledding, and that was a couple of times a week. And then I just got my tissue tolerance back again, did my long range work, lost some fat too, lost some weight. That also helps. Like a lot of lads, if they just lost a couple of kilos, you just take off the weight vest, you'll feel more conditioned because you've just less energy to actually move that body frame now. But I went back playing soccer and felt fly. Like I was playing 90-minute games just like that. And I even had to admit myself, I was like, geez, will I be able to play this game, like these games now? Because I haven't done anything at all. And I was absolutely fine. It was because I had the tissue tolerance, my tendons and ligaments were strong. Yeah, I got the sledding, and that was kind of my conditioning covered. I played my sport then at max effort in training. So we were training and I was able to get my sharpness and capacity back up there. But I never did any needless running. I never just dogged myself for the sake of dogging myself. And now I think it's to my advantage at this stage, where because I didn't do all that running, I'm well able to keep up with people. I'm well able to play the sport, and I don't have all the tendon pains after games that I used to have when I did extra running. Like I used to come off a game, my knees were just in bits. My tendon was just killing me. And I was also the person who would do extra runs at the end of training sessions.
I see them in my team as well. The lads doing extra running, they're thinking, what? Either like why? And I'm very, very quick on my own. Even this year, I took 3 months. I did one run, which was for the army. It was an annual fitness test. It was 3.2. But bar that, I did absolutely zero running, right, for 3 months, one army test. I came back this year's fitness, just focused, as it says, on the strengthening work, and did very, very little speed work. It was just mainly this, short and long range stuff. But it's the fittest I've ever been, and I took the preseason off, the mindless running, and fittest as ever, kept up fine, absolutely no bothers. It's as fit as I've ever been, 34 now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I just proved the fact that we don't need as much of this, as you say. Now, look, there's a mental aspect, of course. If you want to build that mental toughness, robustness, I think there's much better ways of doing it, whether it's hill sprints or other stuff. This running business, I tell you, it's my pet heave. It's just breaking down the athletes. It's just overuse, straight line, overuse injuries. I think, look, we touched on the effects of the benefits from an injury reduction risk, from a performance standpoint and a conditioning standpoint as well. Lastly, from a range of motion, flexibility, very, very briefly, how does this long range, we have another term for it called stretch strength, explain that briefly, and how does this affect range of motion and flexibility as well? This range.
Yeah, so, a lot of lads, when they go into the gym, athletes, they'll kind of have anywhere from 10 to 20 plus minutes of prep to train or whatever it may be. They're doing kind of mobility drills or that kind of thing. And that's just to get their body feeling okay, that they can get into a lift. Okay, great. But next session you come in, you have to do that again and do it again and do it. And it's this continued cycle of, and that's just something that, oh, geez, I have to do this now forever. Well, that's because there's not actually any adaptation happening there. You're just in an isometric hold, holding a stretch for 10 seconds, whatever it may be. So with stretch strength or long range work, when you are lengthening the tissue and then strengthen it through that lengthened position, eventually it gets to the point where your body's kind of like, hey, have the range. You're good. You can keep that. I'm not going to keep tightening up on you. I understand that we want this range now. So like with your hamstrings, for example, my hamstrings used to always be tight, my hips as well. My hamstrings were always tight. And then once I kind of started doing full stretch RDLs, loaded like Jefferson curls,
Yeah.
them kind of things, my hamstrings just stayed lengthened. Hip, same thing, always tight after games. Started doing split squats, lengthening out that hip, maybe some couch stretch where you're like bouncing in the bottom position, where you lengthen the hip and then kind of bounce again, just creating tension in that lengthened position. Gets to the point now where they're fine. Like there's no tightness ever in my hips or my hamstrings. At any moment in time, I could like palms to floor, touch the ground, get into a full couch stretch, any of that kind of thing. And it's because you just built up the tolerance. And I don't have to stretch anymore. Like I admit, I don't stretch. Rarely ever. Maybe like before a game, you might just like get into a couple of positions to make sure, yeah, have that there. Cool. I'm ready to go kind of thing. But it's because I built that tolerance up through long range movements. Now to just say quickly, to get into those long range movements, a lot of times you'll have to stretch first. Great. Like stretch to allow you the capacity to be able to get into those lengthened positions.
But
They get strong in those.
Sorry, you can actually regress a lot of those long range.
Oh, well, absolutely.
Even a Jefferson curl, start body weight or single leg, even a split
Elephant
squat,
walks.
elephant walks, exactly. Even better regress. Even a split squat, as you said, you can do an elevation. You're just holding that position there. You know, with butterfly.
30 seconds.
Yeah. So even with the long range stuff, but I know even if you've very little range of motion, you could do some, you know, passive flexibility work where you're just kind of.
And that's the thing, and that
world's
will
greatest stretch or something.
cause some adaptation to certain people. Like you put someone in an incline performance, for example, like with their knees up on a bench and their back foot is back, that will cause some adaptation to their glute and hip because it's so tight.
Yeah.
Just get to the hold in that position and maybe bounce in that position. That's actually going to cause adaptation to them. Great. Then what do you do when that doesn't work anymore? You have to do it every day. No, then you start to load it, and then you start to strengthen it in that loaded position, and then that gets to the point where the tissues are just like, okay, cool. Like I have this range now. There's no issue anymore. I don't have to continue doing this. And that makes such a difference as an athlete then to never have to worry about like the lads are coming out there, oh fuck, I'm stiff now, feeling shit this morning, whatever. It shouldn't be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. That's a misconception in the industry.
Yeah,
It should
100%.
feel like that.
Yes, I'm going to close here. I think it's something that we're going to touch on again. Look, I really appreciate their time is against us, but Pierce, really appreciate jumping on. Always great talking shop with you. And thanks again for jumping on. Really enjoyed this chat.
Cheers. Yeah, it's been great. I enjoy this as well. It's
Good man, Pierce.
good to share it.
We'll have another one soon. Be in touch. All the best, bud.
See ya.
Thanks again.